So anyway, if you didn't get a handout, Candace has some. Basically, what I'm going to do tonight is you got a little cover sheet with a little header and some lines you can write notes on if you choose to write. If I say something you really like and you want to write it down. Okay, other than that, you got about 36 verses from the King James Bible. And I was saying a little bit earlier, I was telling Lisa, I'm a history buff. I've always loved studying history. American history, world history, Bible history is great. And in the Old Testament, I can dive into the Old Testament and spend hours and get lost. I love the story of King David and his friendship with Jonathan and King Saul, and go back to the prophets and all that stuff and get in depth in that, because there's always a link there to tie it to something in the New Testament. You know, you'll see relationships between things that happened 3,000 years ago and things that are happening today. And that's why I love studying this. So we're going to go to the book of 2 Kings. If you brought a Bible, that's wonderful. If you didn't, or you use your phone, that's wonderful too. But I printed it up so that if you didn't have a book with you, then we're good to go. Lisa's going to assist me. Now, I use the King James Version. I don't deviate from that very much. My wife bought me one of those 2-column King James Amplified that Don mentioned the other night. I've got a couple other versions, but the ones that want to put it into modern day language, and you find out that Jesus was a really cool guy and had a bunch of followers and that kind of, not my cup of tea. So I use the King James, and the King James, of course, is written in the Old English. So there's some stuff there. There's some Noahist and Taoist and Gehazi and Shunammite and that kind of stuff that we're going to kind of work our way through tonight. Okay, and for if you're out there on the media, this is 2 Kings, and it's the 4th chapter, and we're going to start at the 8th verse, and this is the story of the Shunammite woman. Now, somebody asked me, why did they call her a Shunammite? Well, she was from a place called Shunem. And that makes perfectly good sense. She was a Shunammite because that's where she's from. We are Michiganders, okay? And so that's how that works out. So, so one of the incredibly ironic things about this particular story is throughout she's referred to as the Shunammite woman. They never give her name. They talk about some of the greatness that was there. And when I get into these stories, I dissect them and tear them apart. And I find so much in there. And if you see on your little cover sheet, I put on there Elisha and the Shunammite woman, a story of service, faith, strength, love, loyalty, devotion, and what we Christians should be. I found all of that in this little story about this incredible woman that lived about 3,000 years ago. So Lisa, if you want to read that verse 8, and we'll go from there.
All right. And it fell on a day that Elijah passed to Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. And so it was that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread.
Okay, it says she was a great woman. I got into the commentaries and say what was great about her. And I have a Bible that takes the original Greek, Hebrew, and some of the other languages, and it expounds on some of the words. And the word that they used for this particular woman was in the Hebrew, and it translates great, impressive, wealthy, unique. There's about a half a dozen different descriptions for this great woman, for just that word great. And it says in that time period, women, we had Ruth and Esther and some of the well-known women of the Bible who were unique individuals. They wrote books about them, that kind of stuff. and they were pretty outstanding people. And but the truth of the fact that women, and one of the things that's in that description was she was wealthy. Women didn't have wealth back then unless they were royal or they were part of an incredibly wealthy family that probably spurred off from some of the royals. But it says that she was a great woman, which included wealth, and she stood out. Said she was influential in her community. Some of the things. So this woman, they didn't even give her name, but they said she's a great woman. Said as he went by, she constrained him. And then I thought, constrained, that's kind of a unique word to put in there. And when you look at constrained, it's compelled. Basically, she grabbed him and said, hey, dude, I want you to come and have dinner. And every time you come through there, she constrained him, compelled him, kind of gave him a push to come and eat, have meals with her. So she saw that he was unique. So every time now that he came crossing by, he had a place where he gets a free meal. Elisha, he was the prophet. He was the prophet to the kings. He told them what was what and what was not. And she saw that. And we'll talk about Elisha a little bit later on. He was a real hothead, and not one to that you constrained or compelled or pushed around. I mean, he had, after Elijah went up and he took his mantle, he went back and there's a bunch of kids that come out and started teasing him, said, calling him bald. He said, are you going to go up too, old bald head? And he called a couple of she-bears out of the woods and they tore the kids. And and there was 42 of them. And kids, and I'm figuring having raised teenagers and now having teenage grandchildren, I figured they were teenagers giving this guy a bad time, and it didn't work out well for him. But he was a bit of a hothead, and so I see the two sides of Elisha in here too. He was the prophet, God dealt with him, but he was living in a time where you had to be tough. Okay, you had to be direct. You were talking to kings with armies that killed people for no good reason at all. Okay, so she compelled him to come and eat bread. And that next verse says,
and she said unto her husband, behold now, I perceive that this is an holy man of God, which passeth by us continually.
okay, she had a God-inspired impression of this guy. She said, I perceive. She saw the guy walking up and down. She knew he was a prophet. Everybody knew who he was. But she saw something special about him. And she identified that. And she said, this guy's special. He needs special treatment. I perceive that he's not just the guy, the advisor to the king. He is a holy man of God. And that perception was absolutely God-given. That was something very special for this woman that they don't give a name to. Next verse says,
let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed, and a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be, when he cometh to us, that he shall turn in thither. Thither?
Okay.
Thither?
thither.
Thither? Okay.
Okay, so now we got, she gets her husband who, and back in those days, husbands most of the time were about twice the age of their wives, sometimes more. So they got out there and they made their fortune, and they got established, and they got a home, and they got lands, and they got property, and then they went looking for a wife. And oftentimes they were a lot younger. And we'll see as this goes on, this wife was quite a bit younger. But here she says, honey, I want to put an addition on the house. Okay, now those of you that know my wife, if she came and said, I want to put an addition on my house, what would that addition be?
Kitchen. Bathroom.
Flowers. It would be, we'd have a flower room. We'd have a greenhouse. We'd have a potting shed. All that kind of stuff. But, you know, my imagination gets rolling. I see this woman, her husband comes in from the field. He's out there, and she's decided, we're going to put an addition on the house for the prophet. So she's got on her best apron. She made all of his favorite foods. She combed her hair. She's got everything all nice for him. For Don, it would have been tacos.
Yeah.
For me, it would have been probably meatloaf, my wife's meatloaf, but there'd have definitely been a German chocolate cake there. And she says, I want to put an addition on the house, and I want to furnish it. Now, he's a good husband, because the next thing you know, there's an addition on the house with furniture in it. So that kind of indicates to me that he loved her. There was no question there. I want to put an addition on my house for this man that comes by every now and then, put some furniture in there. Yeah, no. But no argument, nothing like that. He just said, okay, honey, let's do that. And they built an addition on the house and furnished it. He loved his wife. She was somebody that was lovable. I keep seeing all these wonderful traits coming to the surface in this woman with no name except the Shunammite woman. Okay? So now he's got a place. Anytime he comes by, there's food, there's lodging, there's comfort. Everything's good. You know, what could be better? Go ahead.
And it fell on a day that he came thither, and he turned into the chamber and laid there. And he said to the Gehazi, his servant, call the Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him.
Go ahead, read the next one.
And he said unto him, say now unto her, behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is to be done for thee? Wouldest thou be spoken for to the king, or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell among my own people.
Okay, so now he wants to show some gratitude. He's got power. He talks to the king on a regular basis. He's got armies that basically he can say, I want that army to do this, and the king says, okay, and sends them to do it. He's showing some gratitude. And one of the other things I found is he's talking to Gehazi, and Gehazi is talking to her. She comes up, he's back there laying on the bed, relaxing. Gehazi's standing in the door, she's standing outside. What can I do for you? And you know what? How can I bless you? And she says, I dwell among my own people. That's her version of it's all good, dude. Everything's good. She's got a home, she's got lands, she's got servants, she's got wealth, she's got the king's #1 prophet staying at her house. And he wants to talk. Can I talk to the king for you? Nah, I don't need that. Can I talk to the captain of the host? And no run soldiers out here to protect you and your land. Nope, I'm good. I dwell amongst my. She's telling him everything's cool. I'm good. I don't need any of that stuff.
And he said, what then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, verily she hath no child, and her husband is old. And he said, call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the door.
Okay. Now this is where men get their noses in places that don't belong sometimes. Back in this time period, if a woman, in many cultures and races, if a woman didn't have children, they considered her barren. And often that was considered that she was cursed by God or their gods or whatever, because she wasn't able to bear children. Okay? Well, this woman, she had accepted the fact that I have no children, I'm not going to have any children. And she was good with that. She's out here, she's welcoming the prophet in, treating everybody good. She's a welcoming person. You know, she's influential. She's got power among her people and all that kind of stuff. She doesn't need at this point, she's good. I don't need a child. And so now Gehazi tells Elisha, she doesn't have any kids. Let's hook her up. And it's kind of like one of those, guys, don't you think you should sit down and have a conversation with her? Like, would you like to have a child? You know, would that be something that you really might want to take on, that responsibility and that duty? But no, they decided, go ahead and read it.
And he said, about this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And she said, nay, my lord, thou man of God, do not lie until thine handmaid.
Okay, so she's saying, yeah, don't tell me that. You know, I've been around a long time. My husband's old. and I'm not having a baby, and now you're telling me I'm going to have a son. And she said, don't tell me that. I'm sure that somewhere along the line, she had had one of those things where somebody comes along and they've got the next medical care. You drink this, you eat this, you do this, and then you'll be able to conceive and have children. None of it works and that kind of stuff. And none of that's in the Bible. This is all my imagination and how I perceive things that went on, and why she said, nah, don't lie to me. You know, don't tell me this lie. I'm not having a child. My husband's old. You know, and I'd imagine she wasn't all that young herself. You know, he might have been old like me, and she was a youngster. I don't know. But he told her, by this time next year, you're going to be rocking a baby. Okay? And she's saying, and I'm sure she went away from there saying, yeah, he's been out in the sun too much here lately. You know, he doesn't know how things work or something like this. And then, what do we read next?
And the woman conceived, and bare a son at that season that Elisha had said unto her, according to the time of life.
And not only did he tell her that she was going to have a baby, and he was right, he even predicted the approximate birth date. You know, that's pretty good. You know, that's pretty good guessing for that. And now here she is, she's got a baby. And I think probably that changed her view of life in general. Okay? But this was, again, this is a woman who was impressive. She was a great woman. She was impressive. She was wealthy. She was influential. She had all these tremendous, she had this great religious or spiritual insight. She knew he was the man of God. He was a holy man. We got to fix him up. We got to take care of him. And now she's, just to show even more that she's special, she has this baby. Okay? And now it's like, cool, she's got a baby. Now she's got someone for all that stuff that her husband has worked for and accumulated to pass that on to. There's a name, there's an honor that goes along with that.
And when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said unto his father, my head, my head. And he said to a lad, carry him to his mother.
Okay, now, this is the other side of that. This is a real good dad, right? And they said when he was grown, in my imagination, this kid's like 7 or 8. You know, he's at that pesky age. He wants to go. His dad and the reapers, the workers, they're going out to start reaping what they planted and bringing all that stuff in. And so she says, you know, he wants to go with you. So she sends him out with him. The kid's running about. It's hot. The sun's out. I'm seeing sunstroke. I'm a paramedic and I'm seeing sunstroke. Okay, my head, my head. And what does the dad say? Tells one of the lads, take him to his mother. Real good fathering there, Dad. You know, you kind of missed the boat there. Here you got this kid, your one kid. You know, he's out in the sun. My head, my head. Now this is too many dads out there like that. I think that no sense. But he says to one of his boys that works for him, take him to his mom. She'll fix him. You know, I'm like, I read that part and I thought, when he came up to the house, she should have had something waiting for him. Okay, but he goes. The lad takes him up to mom.
And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon, and then died.
Okay, the son of promise that was given to her by God, because she was good to the prophet. He went out in the field. His dad was a chucklehead, didn't pay attention to him. Kid running around, gets sunstroke. They carry him up to his mom, sits on her lap for a couple hours, and then he dies. Now, most moms at that point are going to just totally freak out, totally lose it. They're going to come apart. You know, I can't imagine what that would have been like for her. But not this lady, because she's a great woman and she's pretty special. Go ahead.
And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door upon him, and went out. And she called unto her husband and said, send me. I pray thee, one of the young men and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God and come again.
Okay, this is not a mother that's going to panic, that's going to freak out, that's going to pull at her hair and rip her clothes and all that. She takes that dead child, carries him up, lays him on the bed, gets him all situated, goes down, very calmly goes to her husband and says, I need to take one of the young guys, and I need a mule, and I'm going to go. I got something I got to do. That calm. He didn't ask right away. It's like, yeah, what, you know what? And he didn't say, how's the kid? You know, how's Junior? You know, he said his head was hurting. Is he okay? Dad didn't even ask. You know, it's like, what's going on here? You know, Dad sometimes. Okay, read that next verse.
And he said, wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, it shall be well.
He said, all right, you're going to take a mule and one of the young guys and go. And the prophet didn't live next door. You know, it was a journey to get to his house. And he says, what are you going out there for? Real smart dad. Kid went up there sick. Mom's comes out. I need a mule and a young guy to carry me over there. And he says, what are you going over there for? It's not a holiday. It's not a celebration day. There's nothing special about today. And she said, leave it with me. I got this. It'll be well. Don't worry about it. In other words, don't worry about what I'm doing. Just give me what I need. Okay? And basically, she was that strong of a personality and loved that much by her husband and was that influential with her husband. He said, oh, okay. One of the boys. And then
she saddled an ass and said to her servant, drive and go forward, slack not thy riding for me, except I bid thee.
So she goes up and throws the saddle on the mule. And she didn't wait for the kid to come up out of the field. And she goes up, throws the saddle up on it, hooks it all up. She's doing this herself. She's got a dead baby laying up there. She's got in her mind that I know how to fix this. I know who can take care of this. And she gets that. She's not in panic mode. She saddles that mule and gets that guy. And then she jumps on and says, slack not that ride. Don't slow down for anything unless I tell you to. Ride this mule into the ground. She was in a hurry to get to the prophet. She didn't know exactly how it was going to work, but she knew it was going to work. So away they went.
So she went and came unto the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to Gehazi his servant, behold, yonder is that Shunammite. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say unto her, it is well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, it is well.
Okay, so the prophet looks out, he sees her coming, and he sends Gehazi, his servant. He don't want to go out in the heat. He look out there and he says, I see that Shunammite woman coming. Run out there and ask her if everything is good. Find out why she's coming to see me. He didn't even bother to get up and go. He sent Gehazi. Okay? And so Gehazi goes out there and he says, what's going on? Is everything okay? Is you okay? Your husband okay? Your child okay? And she had so much faith and confidence in the God of the prophet that she said, it's all well. Her child was laying back there dead. But that, in her mind, that was just a temporary situation. That was going to be fixed. And she knew that. In her heart, she knew that. It shows me that that woman's spiritual insight was incredible. She was seeing things that we can't even imagine. Although those things that happened 3,000 years ago, they can still happen today and are happening today in some place. Why? Why would it happen for her? Because she believed in it. She had faith in God, the God of that prophet. Okay? So, she said, everything's well. Go ahead.
And when she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught him by the feet. But Gehazi came near to thrust her away. And the man of God said, Let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her, and the Lord hath hid it from me, and hath not told me.
Okay, God wanted to see the reaction of this prophet. He didn't tell him. Now, would it have been just that easy for God to tell Elisha when he saw her coming, her child's dead, she's coming for some help? Yeah, there would have been nothing to it. And it would have been one of those things, but God hid it from him. He wanted him to get that personal contact with this woman. She came and she fell at his feet and wrapped her arms around his feet. And of course, Gehazi, he's going to grab her and toss her aside, and you can't do that to the prophet. And he said, leave her alone. She's vexed. It was at that point that he realized something was seriously wrong. And to me, it's like, you're the prophet. You should have seen this coming all along, way up the road and that kind of stuff. And it's obvious that God had obstructed his view of that situation because he wanted something more out of the prophet. Okay? So go ahead.
Then she said, Did I desire a son of my Lord? Did I not say, Do not deceive me? Then he said to Gehazi, Gird up thy loins, and take my staff in thy hand, and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute him not. And if any salute thee, answer him not again, and lay my staff upon the face of the child.
Okay, so she gets there, she's got him by the ankles, and she says, did I ask you for this son? Did I not tell you, don't lie to me? And now, look what's happened. Okay, she was putting him on the spot. She was putting this all right back in there. All that vexation, that hurt that she was feeling. He said she was vexed. Now he's seeing that. He's feeling that. And she's putting the guilt back on him. I didn't ask you for this child. I told you don't lie to me. This is all you're doing. Now you're going to fix it. And that's basically what she was doing right there, was telling him, your time, boy, you're going to fix it. And what did he do? He says, hey, son, I don't want to get out there in the heat and do all that. Take my staff and go back to his, but don't let anybody stop you along the way and talk to you. You know, don't stop talking to anybody. If anybody wants to stop you, tell them I'm in a hurry. You go on and you take in my staff and you lay it on that child and everything will be okay. Not God's plan, was it? Okay, we'll see here.
And the mother of the child said, As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And he arose and followed her.
She had him, and she wasn't letting go. Basically, she says, Buster, you created this. Now there's a bad situation. I'm not leaving here without you. You and me, we're going. I'm going, you're going with me. And she was convincing enough, and he got the message, so he girded up himself, and he got dressed up, and he said, okay, let's go. Because he knew this lady was serious, and she wasn't putting up with sending a servant with your staff, or I'll make a long distance prayer, or any of that kind of stuff. No, sir, you're going with me. That's persistence, that's faith, that's, hope, and all the things wrapped up into it. But and the more I read about this woman, the better I liked her, because this is one tough lady. She'd been through all this, and now she's down here, and Gehazi's going to grab her and toss her aside. I think if he'd have done that, she'd have come up swinging, and he'd have regretted it, because she'd come for that prophet, and she had hold of him, and he was going with her one way or the other. She might have taken his staff and knocked him in the head with it, tied him up, thrown him on that mule, and taken him back. Well, one way or another, she was taking him back with her, because she knew, you made a declaration and gave me that child. For some reason, it's taken away. You're going to fix it. And she had hold of him, and I think he thought, for my own good, I better get up and get going. This woman was serious, and he finally came to that realization. Okay, so go ahead and read that next one.
And Gehazi passed on before them, and laid the staff upon the face of the child. but there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him, and told him, saying, The child is not awake.
Okay. He's saying, boss, your big idea, put the staff on the kid, dumb idea, didn't work. Kid's still not awake. He's laying there as dead as he was before. Okay? And we knew that was going to happen. The Shunammite woman knew that was going to happen. I got to suspect that Elisha, at this point, realizes, yeah, that wasn't a good fix for this, and we gotta take care of this and get this thing done. Okay? So, and Gehazi comes back and tells him, I don't know what to tell you, dude, but, it's not fixed. The kid's still dead. So they journey on.
And when Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead, and laid upon his bed. He went in therefore, and shut the door upon them twain, and prayed unto the Lord.
Okay. She had laid him up in Elisha's bed. Remember that addition that she charmed her husband into building, and all that furniture she put in there, and it was comfortable for Elisha whenever he was going by. He got fed, he had a bed, he got well taken care of. That dead child's laying up there on his bed. He went in and he closed the door. It's like, okay. And I'm thinking he's saying, okay, God, I need some help here. We got some work to do. Okay, this child is still dead, and he's asking the Lord, he said, and he prayed and asked God for some help, is what he was doing.
And he went up and lay upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm.
Okay, now, I always get this question, usually from some juvenile delinquents, some juveniles. Is that the first recorded case of CPR? He did mouth to mouth. And it's like, yeah, I'll give you mouth to mouth. He got up and he stretched out. God was working through him now. He put his mouth on his mouth. He was laid out there, and I think what Elisha was thinking is, oh God, I need some help here. How are we going to fix this? And he laid out there, and I have to think that Elijah's faith, even though he'd seen the miracles of Elijah, he performed a bunch of miracles and miraculous things himself. I got to think that he's thinking, woo, now we're raising people from the dead. This is a whole nother story. But you know what? You know who else was raised from the dead a couple of thousand years down the road? This is where I got to see, okay, you can raise this child from the dead. Christ raised from the dead, came out of that tomb. There's always a redemption that's involved here. I look back at these stories and I link them in. I think, yeah, so the child's flesh waxed warm.
Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him. And the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes.
At first, the child warmed up. He didn't wake up. And he says he walked about the house. And I'm thinking he's walking and praying. God, the kid's still not alive. And he's not opened his eyes. He's not got up out of that bed yet. And God, come on, this is your time to shine. And I'm thinking he's pacing and probably feeling a little nervous because he knows if he opens that door and that child's not up and bouncing, that mother's not going to be happy. Okay? So he went up and he did it again, and it says the child sneezed 7 times. Breath came back into it, and he opened his eyes.
And he called Gehazi and said, Call the Shunammite. So he called her. And when she was coming unto him, he said, Take up thy son. Then she went in, fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground, and took up her son and went out.
Okay, she came in. Basically, it was like, I knew you could do it. That's why I came and got you. She bowed down, and that's a form of worship. You bow down at the feet of somebody. She was worshiping that prophet's God through that prophet. That child was all good, and we'll get into a little bit of the rest of the story. and she took him up and went out. Now, if you go into the 5th chapter of 2 Kings, Elisha's out doing all kinds of other stuff again. Now, how many of you, some of you younger folks may not know, but how many of you remember a radio commentator named Paul Harvey? Okay, what was Paul's famous punchline? You remember? And now for the rest of the story. And what Paul Harvey, for those of you who aren't familiar with him, I love listening to him. He was a lot of AM radio, so, you know, that goes back a way. My dad would listen to him all the time. But he would dig up unusual facts, historical stories, people from the past, and he would tell, he would talk about their lives, or that he would go into different events that happened. And there was always a side story that went with it. You know, this guy, he was 15 years old when he lied about his age, and he joined the Marines during World War II, and he came away with the Congressional Medal of Honor, and all these really interesting, they used to call them human interest stories, okay? But Paul Harvey, his tagline was, and now for the rest of the story. And then he'd bring that in. So my name's just Harvey, not Paul Harvey, but now for the rest of the story. We go over to 2 Kings chapter 8, and we find the story picks up again and is still miraculous. Go ahead.
Then spake Elisha unto the woman, whose son he had restored to life, saying, Arise, and go thou and thine household, and sojourn wheresoever thou canst sojourn, for the Lord hath called for a famine, and it shall also come upon the land 7 years.
Okay, so here's this gap of time. Now, the woman's husband isn't mentioned here. He went to the woman. So I think it was a space of time, although it doesn't really designate how much time, but I think it's a space of time. Her husband has passed on, because it said in the beginning, it said he was old. So he's gone on, and it doesn't refer to her now as the Shunammite woman, but the woman whose child he had raised from the dead. Okay, now she's known for something different. Okay, and it's another one of those miraculous things. And God had told him, okay, there's going to be a famine in the land. So take your son and go wherever you can go, where the famine's not going to affect you, because it's going to be 7 years. And he came and he gave her this warning. God had told him this is what's going on. And I think that it was one of those side thoughts to him was, I better go warn that Shunammite woman, because she's been so good to me through all these years. And now, see, she's still reaping the rewards from way back in the beginning of this, where she saw him, she perceived that he was a holy man of God. She started feeding him. She got her husband into building an addition and housing him. She took care of him every time he came by, and she reaped the benefits. A son died. He was raised from the dead. Okay, and now we get down the road, and he comes and he gives her a warning. He said, I came to tell you, God told me there's going to be a famine, a 7-year famine in the land. You need to pack up and get out of here. Okay, now this is a woman, and her husband had a lot of land. So you remember, the reapers were out reaping? That means that there were fields planted that needed to be harvested. Okay, we're going to add an addition onto the home. It's probably a pretty good sized home to begin with. She was wealthy. It says so right in the beginning, a great woman. And now he's telling her, pack up and get out, because it's going to get bad around here. Okay, he came and gave her that warning. So what did she do? She packed up and away they went. Go ahead.
And the woman arose and did after the saying of the men of God. And she went with her household and sojourned in the land of the Philistines 7 years.
Okay, she didn't just pack up her son. It says she packed up her household. So she took her house servants, the people that worked for her, and she was watching. This is why she was a great woman. She's watching out for everybody. All those people that had served her and worked for her and been loyal to her. Now, I said on my little introduction sheet, she's loyal. She's loyal to the people that had been employees of hers, that had worked. She's showing that loyalty. She's packing them up. Now, she probably had some money. And she packed up that money, and she packed up all these folks that were special to her. I'd imagine there were some relatives along there, and maybe even some in-laws, if you can put up with them, you know, that kind of thing. But she packed them up. She packed up the house, her household, and went and sojourned, lived, stayed in the land of the Philistines for 7 years. Now, one of the things that you gotta, when you get into looking at the geographical area around Shunem, Shunem was one of those states in Israel, or one of those regions that you had, this army is going to come over here and mess with Israel, and they came across Shunem. And this army was going to mess with Israel, and they came across Shunem. So there was the Valley of Gilgal, and these different areas that you see on the maps, the old maps, where Shunem was kind of in the middle of a lot of this stuff. And so a lot of times the Philistines were sworn enemies, along with the Moabites and some of the other ites and sites that in that time. And Shunem was caught up in the middle of this. So she packed up, and I think what she did was she went to the nearest place close to Shunem without having to travel forever, and she crossed over into the land of the Philistines. Well, at this point, of course, they were at peace. And of course, she was a woman of substance, and she's got this house. And I'd imagine that she packed up the sheep and the cattle and the donkeys and the horses and all the other livestock and took them with her. And I'm sure when she got to the land of the Philistines, and again, I don't have any Bible for this. This is just me kind of trying to figure things out. She probably had, I'd like to stay here with this, cover it. And she's paying people, and and she's working. But she was such a great woman, and God was smiling on her and continuing to bless her because she had been loyal and faithful and devoted and showed kindness to the man of God and showed the faith to go get him when her son died, and not to take that kid out and bury him, but take him up and lay him on the bed and go after the prophet and bring him back and know that God was going to deliver him and that he was going to bring that kid back to life. She had no doubt about that. And all of that wound up with this blessing. She crossed over. He warned her. She took off. She went to the land of the Philistines, stayed there 7 years, and it doesn't say that she had a single problem while she was there. Okay, now we get into the next verse. She comes home after the 7 years.
And it came to pass at the 7 years' end that the woman returned out of the land of the Philistines, and she went forth to cry unto the king for her house and for her lands.
Okay, she came back and she found squatters. Yeah, she came back and somebody had settled into her land. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. That's my house. That's my land. What are you doing here? It's not yours anymore, lady. Hit the road. And now this is again why I really like this lady. I like her chutzpah. Because she says, oh yeah, well, we'll just see about that. And what does she do? She doesn't go crying to the neighbor next door or the mayor or the governor or something like that. She's headed to the palace. She had a connection. She took care of the prophet. Don't you know that when Elisha was sitting and counseling the king, and the king says, where you been? Who's been taking care of you? You look well fed. Well, there's this Shunammite woman. And she puts us up. She built an addition onto her home for us. She makes sure we're fed every time we come through there. She's been taking care of it. So now this king, he's got in the back of his head, okay, he's well taken care of. So she figures, I got a connection there. I'm not messing around. I'm going to the palace. I'm going to go to the king. I'm going to tell him I want my land back. Okay, now this next verse is the one that makes me giggle. Okay, I find this amazing.
And the king talked with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, saying, tell me, I pray thee, all the great things that Elisha hath done.
Okay, so the king, he knew Elisha. He'd been counseled by Elisha. And he had sent for Gehazi. Because Gehazi was Elisha's right-hand man. Been with him everywhere he went. been through all the stuff with him, knew all the stuff he'd done, had seen all the miracles, all the different things and all the special things and all that. And so the king, he sent for Gehazi. And they're sitting here and they're having a little chat. And he's saying, okay, now. And this king is excited about Elisha because he hears all these stories. And he knew about Elijah before him. And he says, tell me, Gehazi, tell me all these tremendous, wonderful, miraculous things that Elisha's done. I want to hear all the stories. Go in depth, go in detail. Tell me all about it. Okay? And coincidence? I don't think so. So then what happens?
And it came to pass, as he was telling the king how he had restored a dead body to life, that behold, the woman whose son he had restored to life cried to the king for her house and for her land. And Gehazi said, my lord, O king, this is the woman, and this is her son, who Elisha restored to life.
And I read that one, but he said, my lord, O king. I'm thinking, he's saying, my lord, O king. Here he's telling him, the king, the story. And as he's telling the king the story, she comes pushing through the crowd and she says, hey, king, I want my land back. You owe me. You know, I got something coming. And she's making enough noise to get Gehazi's attention. And he looks over and he goes, my lord. You know, and it's all in how you read it, but I read it as, my lord, there she is. Oh, king, that's the woman, and that's the child. That's why I always say, I don't believe in coincidence, okay? I don't buy it. People say, no, I ran into so-and-so today. We were just talking about them earlier this week. I hadn't seen them in a couple of years, and we ran into them at the Costco today. What a coincidence. No. That's not a coincidence. That's the hand of God. Okay? Just like this story right here. She shows up. Gehazi's telling the king about this resurrected little boy and this woman that had taken care of. Here she is, and here's that boy that died and rose again. It was resurrected. I don't believe in coincidence. That's the direction of God. So when you're out there and you run into that person, or you see somebody that looks familiar, and I have been known to say to somebody, man, you really look familiar to me. Do I know you? And sometimes it's one of those exchanges where, no way in the world, I knew this guy. Well, my name's Harvey Holland, you know, and I'll introduce myself. And sometimes they look at you like, yeah, you're kind of weird, you know, and it is. But you know, you never know when that door is going to open. God puts you in people's lives and in their path. Yep. Let's finish this up. And she cries out. Go ahead.
Okay. And when the king asked the woman, she told him. So the king appointed unto her a certain officer, saying, restore all that was hers, and all the fruits of the field since the day that she left the land, even until now.
Look at that. She took, way back in chapter 4, verse 8, she saw that prophet. She realized that he was a holy man of God. She made a count. She started feeding him. I still think she sweet-talked her husband into putting that addition on, because that's something, you know. I'm not putting any additions on, I tell you, so don't, you know. But, you know, and she took care of him and the blessings. And it's like, you can't outgive God. Whether it was the Old Testament God that they refer to here, or the God that we see in the form of Jesus today, same God, same power, same ability, same blessings. Okay? You can't outgive him. So when God puts that person in your path, don't miss those cues. And you need to be spiritual enough. And you need to be focused enough. How many of you, let me put it like this. We live busy lives. And, you know, I go back to my firehouse career. I did my 24s, and I get off duty, take a shower, change into my scrubs, and go do 12 hours at the hospital in the emergency room. And I go home, have a meal, get some sleep, get up and do it again. I was busy. And I ran on fumes for years, okay? And I look back at it and I see, boy, I probably sure missed some opportunities for God to use me because I got so busy that I couldn't see the work that God would lay out in front of me. But you know what the really great part is? I look in the mirror and this old man looks back at me. The lots of dark wavy hair is no longer there. That's what's left is gray. The really neat black mustache that was me, and I was known around Oakland County as the guy, the firefighter with the best mustache in the county. It's gone gray. What can I say? But it's not too late. We can still be used of God. You know, I don't know how old that woman was. Her husband was old. It said right there. Gehazi said, her husband's old. But you know what? He provided the means, the financial means, and the love and the admiration and the respect for his wife. That she wanted to feed the guy? Okay, go ahead. She wanted to build a house, an addition on the house and put furniture in it, and he said, okay, go ahead. God even used him, and he didn't realize it. Okay? But you know what? It goes full circle. The blessings come back around, and it's like, and now for the rest of the story. What's the rest of the story in your life?
I was thinking the addition that they made because she met him, was that in preparation for her having a child too?
That may well have been. It was certainly in preparation for her to lay that dead child on that bed.
Right.
Okay? So God don't work in happenstance and coincidence and that kind of stuff. There's a direction. There's a path. How many of you are here because if you go way back, a schoolmate, a neighbor, a coworker, or somebody testified to you, or you saw them and you saw there was something very different about them, and it intrigued you, and you wound up here because of them. How many of you have that story? Mine was a neighbor. Okay, guy lived across the street. He was slick. He saw me as this 15-year-old kid, and he had me mowing his grass and doing odd jobs. And he says to me, he says, I got to go on night shift for the next 6 months. And my wife and my two little boys, they go to Bible study on Tuesday night, and they like to go to the Thursday night evangelistic service, and I can't go with them. Would you mind riding along? He said, I will pay you to ride along. I'll give you $5 a week if you'll just ride to church with them. And it's like, easy money. You know, I'd get in the car, two cute little boys, they're a lot of fun. And I'd get there in the summertime, she'd put the top down on the car, I'd sit there in the car and listen to the radio. Well, come fall and winter, too cold to sit out there, and I started going in, sitting down in the church. And this fellow named Johnny Yarnell, I come in and he goes, hello, young man. It's about time you came in them doors. He said, I've seen you out there in the car enough. I said, it's too cold to be out there. He said, well, come on in and sit with me. And I went over and sat down with Brother Johnny, and he's explaining things to me. Okay? And then it came Tuesday night, Thursday night, and he says, you ought to come Sunday, go to Sunday school. You might learn something. It'd be really interesting for you. And around come Brother Jay Newman, he said, you'll be in my class. Shook my hand. This big old handsome man with these hands, like, he shook your hand. He said, I'd love to have you in my class. And it's like, okay. So I got dressed, and there I was in Sunday school. And the rest is history, you know? And the rest of the story is, God's not finished with me. He's not finished with any of us yet. You're here tonight. I hope you heard something into the story to make you realize there's something God's trying to put in your path. It might be a family member, somebody you work with, a neighbor. I stopped one time. I was coming home from work. We'd been out fighting fire all night. I'm in my uniform. I turn off a Perry onto Jocelyn, and there's a lady there pulled off to the side of the road. She's got a flat tire. I pull in behind her, put my four-ways on my truck. I get out, and she's standing there. I said, I'll change that tire for you, man. And she said, oh, I can't ask you to do that. I said, you didn't ask me to. I said, that's what we do. We got her tire, I got her tire changed. I had my name badge on, H. Holland. She calls the chief the next day and says, or later that day, and says, I want to commend one of your firefighters, H. Holland. And he goes, oh, that's Harvey. Yeah, he's one of our younger guys. So well, he went out of the way. He stopped to change my tire for me. I'd like to reward him. He said, no, ma'am, he wouldn't do that. She said, well, I'd like to call him. Can I get his number? I'll give him your number. So chief next day hands me her number. I call her. We call. She said, could I take you and your wife to lunch or something? I said, no, that's all good. It's all good. I said, but you know what you could do? I said, you could come to church with me on Sunday. And she goes, well, what church? I tell her, that Sunday, there she was, you know? And she was around for a while. I don't know, but you know what? She heard the word of God. And we have those opportunities. It's not coincidence. You know, this wasn't coincidence, none of this. But the thing is, when you are loyal to, devoted to, believe in, and have faith in our God, He's a mighty, mighty God. And what we've had our healings, we've had our miracles right here in this class. Okay? And what do you need? You know, what miracle do you need? What? You got family members out there that they need a blessing, they need the truth, they need salvation, they need a healing. There's no reason why that we can't ask God. But you know what, this lady, this story is one of my very favorite stories. And anytime I get a chance, I'll tell somebody about it. And I always say, and now for the rest of the story. Because that's where that big pile of blessings. She didn't just get her land and her house and everything back. He said, send the army over there. Everything that was grown on that land since she left, she gets paid for, and get her going again. What? How does it get better than that? You know? Okay. That's what I got. I hope you enjoyed.
Yeah,
all right.
Sure did.
And like I said,
Speaking of coincidences, because I fully believe with you, I don't believe in them. Last night I ordered a pizza from Cottage Inn, and one of our church members showed up at the door. Didn't know that, but I asked her where she went to church, and she told me, and says, I go there too. She's been coming here for 40, or her parents been coming here for 40-some years.
yeah, and none of that has happened, Stan. You know, did she need a witness to remind her, hey, come to church? You know,
Oh, no,
I
she
hope
comes.
I'll see you on Sunday. That kind of stuff, some encouragement or something like that.
Correct.
And you know, it's when God sends that whatever it is across your path, be aware.
You know, there's a lot of nuggets in this story. But one that I take from it is Elijah, the man of God. God wanted him to get personal.
Yeah.
You know, and instead of just fluffing it off, go get personal with the situation. And, you know, it's creating God's story.
Yeah, he went, here, take my staff and go put it on the kid. You know, I don't want to be bothered. Yeah, well, you just got bothered by God. She got him by the feet. She wasn't turning loose. You know, when God starts giving you those directions, He starts steering you. Be steered.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people, man, I'm not that type of personality. I can't witness him. Some of you know my brother Ron. One of the sweetest men that ever walked the face of the earth. Best brother anybody could ever have. And he was always quite shy and reserved, you know. But when it comes to talking about God, watch out, because he's got this holy boldness. And I sit back and chuckle sometime, because he'd go to the donut shop, and it's like if there was somebody there that was new, they were going to get witnessed to. Okay? And so don't tell me you're shy. Don't tell me you can't do that, because God will give you that holy boldness, and He'll step you out there and make you somebody, put you in somebody's path. Okay? And that might be just what they're looking for, is somebody to say, are you having a bad day? I mean, not too long ago, I'm in line, and this guy I said, you look like you're not having a very good day. He said, my day's been terrible. I said, can you tell me about it? He said, it's just some personal stuff. I said, can I pray with you? He said, would you mind? I said, not at all. And I stood right there and prayed with him, you know? And he said, thank you so much. And that was it. I may never see the guy again. But those opportunities come, don't pass them up. Okay? Jump at the chance every time. So, all right, well, I think I'm That's pretty good. It's 8:01. Okay, thanks for being with us, for all you folks on YouTube and all that. And Don, when you watch this, I don't want your job. Thanks, everybody.